Well, 2 games in the NHL playoffs tonight, including, of course, the Leafs looking to go up in their series against Florida 3-2. Or, I guess, conversely, you could say Florida's looking to go up 3-2 against the Leafs. It depends on your vantage point, I suppose. I think that the vast majority of people listening would be more attached to the Toronto Maple Leafs than the Florida Panthers. I don't think I know one Florida Panthers fan, actually. If there are Florida Panthers fans out there, let me know. I don't know one off the top of my head. Of course, people who hate the Toronto Maple Leafs are fans of the Florida Panthers right now. And that's the fun. That's the fun of it, I suppose, folks. Look, when all is said and done, it's just sports. It's just recreation. And perhaps we overdo it, I guess. But look, it's a distraction from what goes on in the real world. And that's not a bad thing, I suppose. Anyway, we shall see tonight. The Leafs, look, I don't want to say must win, but it's pretty much a must win situation for Toronto, I would say. You can't go down 3-2. Heading back to Florida, that would be the death knell, I would dare say. Anyway, how about this Edmonton Oilers? Don't get enough attention, really. They're looking to wrap up their series against the Golden Knights in Las Vegas. And Edmonton had a cup run last year, went to the Stanley Cup Finals, so good for Edmonton. And the Dallas Stars, wow, that's a good hockey team, folks. Winnipeg's in tough against them. They're down 3-1. And the Winnipeg Jets, of course, won the President's Trophy, President's Cup, whatever we're calling it, best in the regular season. And that's often a curse. Often, I don't know what the statistics would vet, but it seems to me that the team that wins, that finishes first overall in the NHL standings, often has a quick exodus from the playoffs. Again, I don't know what empirical data would back that up. Wouldn't be hard to research. But nonetheless, Winnipeg's got to get it done. A great hockey team and at home for Game 5, and they're looking to extend their series. But Dallas always seems to be good for whatever reason. That franchise always seems to produce good teams, good playoff teams. I don't know what's going on, but they seem to always get it done. Anyway, perhaps you can weigh in on some of this when we open the phone lines between noon and 1 today. Of course, Dr. Gillis will be by for house calls. It's a Wednesday. And Dr. Gillis will join us from 11 until noon. Of course, I'll get his take on the Toronto Maple Leafs. He's a diehard Leafs fan and has been to, I think, at least one playoff game this season so far in Toronto. So I'll get his take on this and, of course, take your health-related calls and questions. And we'll open the phone lines between noon and 1 today, and lots to get to. I got a number of things in the pile, including, of course, Mark Carney, who is meeting with his new cabinet this morning in Ottawa. He shook up the cabinet yesterday by moving some key players into new positions, promoting 24 new faces in a movement to signal change at the top. Dominic LeBlanc will spearhead Canada's U.S. relations in the wake of American President Donald Trump's tariffs and threats of annexation. Anita Anand is the new Foreign Affairs Minister. Sean Fraser, this is quite a story actually, was on his way out, wasn't going to run again, talked about it, said that he needs 40 years old, has a young family, and needs to spend time with his family. Mark Carney changed his mind quickly, got him to run again, and now he's the Attorney General. So I don't know how you're going to have what type of work-life balance goes with being the Justice Minister of a G8 country, G7 country. But I would dare say that it's probably going to be a stretch to say that he's going to have some more work-life balance. But anyway, nonetheless, for whatever reason, Sean Fraser is the golden boy in the liberal world, and he's got a big task ahead of him for sure with justice. That's a huge portfolio. Some things that you can talk about. Again, I've got a number of things in the pile that I'll get to and that I'll tee up when we open the phone lines between noon and 1. I'd like to thank Vanessa Van Ness. As always, on the other side of the glass, the control board's doing a fine job, as always. All right, let's dive into this now. Joining us is Peggy Cameron with the nonprofit Friends of Halifax Common. Peggy, thanks for joining the show. We appreciate your time.
Good morning, Todd. Thank you.
All right, so a recent public meeting regarding Robie Street widening and this project is growing in controversy. For those who don't know what's going on, give everybody the broad strokes, if you will.
Well, the broad strokes are that the public's been largely uninformed and unengaged in the decision that HRM is proceeding on to spend what we estimate will be at least $200 million to buy, demolish, and widen Robie Street. They're buying and demolishing buildings and planning to cut 80 trees. And data shows that widening roads, even for public transportation, does not reduce traffic or congestion. So that's the broad strokes.
Okay, and you had a recent meeting and was well attended. Tell us about the meeting.
Yeah, we had over 100 residents who came to the meeting. It was a panel with myself, Jeff Carabano, who teaches at the School of Social Work, Howard Epstein, retired city councillor and MLA, and then Frank Palermo, who has so much experience across the country in planning, architecture, and in particular around transportation.
Okay, and what tell us about some of the dialogue or what was said and what were some of the main concerns that are at play here?
Well, the main concern is the fact that unlike other instances where we see demolitions happening in the city that are being done by developers, turning beautiful buildings into parking lots, what's going on at this time is it's the province and the city are using our public money to buy with the intention of demolishing at least 12 to 14. I shouldn't say we don't know, but we estimate it's 12 to 14 historic buildings that are all affordable multi-unit buildings in the last historic neighborhood on Robie Street. So just to have your listeners understand precisely where that is, it's between North Street to Kennard. And many people coming into the city, if they come in on the McDonald Bridge, don't turn left. But if you're coming down Robie from, say, Yonge Street, you're kind of traveling through this sea of car dealerships, parking lots, nothingness. And then you get to this area south of North Street where there's trees, there's older buildings, and it just has a sense of place that nothing else on Robie Street has any longer.
Okay, and tell us if this goes forward, what the landscape will look like. How is this impacting the landscape there?
Well, it's not going to go forward. That's our position.
Yeah.
The landscape is that unknown to people who drive through, for them it's a traffic sewer. They're getting from one place to another and back again. And unknown to the city planners who drew a line through the neighborhood, it's a very, very high concentration of housing that is never going to be replaced. In that area, there's 3 to 4 First Nation apartment buildings. There's 6 to 8 non-market housing co-ops. There's 3 youth shelters. And there's 4 heritage properties. And one of the heritage properties is the home of a former home and clinic of Dr. Lagour. And all of the information that we as citizens have found out about this proposed widening has only been obtained through Freedom of Information. But on the map, we can see that all of the buildings from North Street and further south of Charles Street are planned to be purchased, to be raised by the city. And this is a city initiative. The city went to the province and said, can you give us maybe $18 million? And the province did that. We don't know anything further than that's their intention.
Okay, so you say that you're going to stop this. What's council saying?
Oh, I should add as well that the city is planning on cutting 80 trees, 40 trees between North Street and Kennard.
Mm-hmm.
And these trees, again, they give the public realm beauty, but they also provide tremendous, benefit to our environment. And there's a very technocratic amount of disinformation out there about what the outcome was. Oh, we'll tear down buildings, but we're going to build more affordable housing. Or, oh, we'll cut trees, but we're going to have more trees. This is all just a sideways distraction, because these things don't get replaced and they don't happen overnight. So what we have now in this time of economic precarity, we saw how tough it was for the council to make decisions to balance their budget, to have them imagine that spending $200 million to destroy a community at this time is any way forward, is not on. And many counselors that we've met with, Howard at Upstone and I have met with probably 8 counselors, maybe 9 counselors, and they were all very open and interested to hear what we had to say, because most of them are new counselors, or they weren't paying attention when the plan got passed. They haven't actually been aware of what the city planning staff are up to. So I think that we have a real opportunity now for everyone in the city to engage with their counselor, not just peninsular counselors where this is happening, but people who really want something purposeful as an outcome of the expenditure of $200 million. I think on the previous program where we last spoke about this, I proposed there are many solutions that could be done more effectively for this very short distance between North and Kennard. And all we see is that city staff come back more fast and fixed on their idea of what they see as the solution and why other options won't work, even though in cities around the world, these are the kinds of things that we're proposing that have already been adopted.
Okay, what are some of those other options before we run out of time? What are some of those other options?
Some of them options, and again, I would say that we're not being prescriptive, but we're saying, look at this and yes, make it work. Don't say why it can't work, make it work. So bi-directional lane changes, like on the McDonald Bridge or on the Chebucto Road, or traffic priority signals. We spoke about that a lot the last time I was on the program. Or if, as the staff says, the objective is to get to light rail transit, they're actually suggesting in the future they wouldn't have curbside pickup for transit. They'd have a center lane. So Indianapolis is an example of a city where they had, in 2018, the longest bi-directional single-lane light rail transit in the U.S. It was 3.5 miles long. That just goes down the center lane, and they use signals. Buses don't, there's no traffic accidents. It's all engineered to work. That distance between Yonge all the way to Kennard is only about 3 miles. So it's a shorter distance. And yet our staff are saying, no, we have to spend this money. Too bad about the properties. They don't even understand who lives there, who's being impacted. So it's just not good enough.
Okay, you say there's a lot of disinformation out there. Who's perpetuating this disinformation? Is it a counselor? Is it who's responsible
I would say
for it?
One of the lead people is Sean Cleary at a public hearing in 2022 when, in December, when our neighborhood had to trundle over to Alderney Landing for a matter relating to this. Sean Cleary really chastised us, saying there were no buildings going to be cut, there were no trees going to be cut. What were we doing there? And we kind of were rattled, but we all got up and said sensible things. And as we finished, he said, there's no buildings going to be cut, there's no trees going to be cut. Like, he totally gaslit us. And to this day, I hear him in your program where he says there's going to be more affordable housing, there's going to be more trees. No, that's not true. The city has upzoned the entire region without any protection for existing housing, affordable housing. There's nothing being done in exchange or handed over to the public in exchange for even building 40-story buildings, or in this neighborhood to build 10-story buildings. Those developers are just taking that money to the bank. And our city is losing. We're losing out on who gets to live there. We're losing out on the beauty of the public realm. And we are losing out on the services and the reason why we would choose to live there. This year, the city had to borrow $10 million from the library fund. We do need public transit. We need a plan to have people not be in their cars, but it has to be effective. And our money, our public money, has to be used for the best possible outcome, not for a chunk of Robie that's not even part of a system.
Okay, Peggy, we're out of time, but so just give us in 30 seconds or whatever in that kind of time frame. What's next here? What's the next steps here?
Well, I would recommend that any of your listeners who are concerned about the future of our city, the future of their kids' ability to get a place to live, really what they all need to be doing is reaching out to their counselor. So they can email clerks@halifax.ca. They can email the mayor, same thing, mayor@halifax.ca. They can say there's no legal requirement that the city proceed. It's not politically wise. It's not economically wise. It's too destructive. We should not be displacing people from a unique, mixed community, and it's not effective. We need to be better able to deliver what we want for public transit than just simply drawing a line through a neighborhood and making a plan that won't fit an existing built neighborhood.
Okay,
right to say no way to wrecking our Robie Street neighborhood.
Okay, Peggy, appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
Okay, I thank you as well.
All right, take care.
Have a good day.
All right, you
Bye.
as well. Peggy Cameron with the group nonprofit Friends of Halifax Common. I saw this story on the CBC website. Several conferences relocate north of the border as Canadians refuse to travel to the United States. We'll talk with somebody impacted by this when we come back.
Facts.
And I saw the story on the CBC website. The headline, several conferences relocate north of the border as Canadians refuse to travel to the United States. Conference organizers say they made changes after members expressed concerns over U.S. travel. Joining me to discuss all of this is Nathan Kalman-Lamb, University of New Brunswick Sociology Professor. Nathan, thanks for joining the show. We appreciate your time, of course.
Pleasure to be here.
All right, so you were impacted in a pretty big time way by this. Tell us your story.
Yeah, so it's actually a long story. I'll try to keep it as concise as I can. But this actually started for me in January, because on January 17th, I was supposed to travel to Washington, D.C. to a bookstore there for an event related to my new book about college football. And when I travel to the United States, what I usually do is, because I'm flying from Fredericton, we don't have direct flights to the United States. We've got to go through Montreal or Toronto. I usually fly through Trudeau Airport in Montreal. You usually go through pre-clearance there. You enter the United States in pre-clearance in the Montreal airport, and then you arrive in the United States in the domestic terminal, and you're on your way. And so on that occasion, I was flying to D.C. Reagan Airport through Montreal, and when I arrived, not even in pre-clearance, but in advance of pre-clearance, as I was approaching the security line, someone intercepted me, and I was ultimately told by CBP, which is the American Department of Homeland Security, Customs and Border Protection personnel, I was told I was not allowed to enter the United States on that occasion, despite the fact that I lived for 6 years in the United States working at U.S University, and despite the fact that I'd been to the U.S. in both October and November of 2024 without any mishaps, I was just simply told, you're not allowed to enter the United States today. They refused to tell me any reason why. They told me if I ever wanted to enter the United States again, I would have to interview at a consulate and formally get a B1, B2 visa, the kind of visa most Canadians usually receive automatically when they try to enter the United States and nothing's stamped in your passport. So, because I had a trip in March scheduled, I was invited to participate in a conference in Columbia, South Carolina at the College Sports Research Institute, again, about our new book. Because I wanted to attend that conference in March, I set out trying to rectify the situation to allow myself to re-enter the United States. So in the intervening 2 months, I did, in fact, have an expedited visa appointment at the U.S. consulate in Toronto. I flew all the way to Toronto for that. I was interviewed and ultimately granted a visa such that I now have in my passport, I'm one of the few Canadians who has a formal B1, B2 visa in my passport. I also reached out to U.S. Senator Chris Murphy's office because I've worked with his office in the past on college sports-related issues, and they liaised with CBP, the Department of Homeland Security, for me trying to find out why I was denied. They did not receive information about why I was denied, but they were told that I was allowed to approach the border again. So that means, in advance of my trip in March, I had formal permission from both the State Department and the Department of Homeland Security, the two governing bodies that determine that regulate entry into the United States. Both of them said that I was allowed to enter. And so I once again proceeded to Trudeau Airport in Montreal on March 19th, first thing in the morning. My flight arrived at 6:30 a.m. Eastern Time. And what happens now, and I think listeners will be possibly surprised to hear this, anyone entering the United States for any reason out of pre-clearance of a Canadian airport is now subject to fingerprinting upon entry. That was not true in November when I last was able to enter the United States. That's true for everyone now. And as I was putting my fingerprints down, it goes thumb, four fingers, thumb, and it was thumb, green light, four fingers, green light, four fingers, green light. And then I put my final thumb down, expecting another green light, but my final thumb yielded a red light. And that means that despite having not been asked any questions whatsoever, right, and despite having, on the authority of both the State Department and the Department of Homeland Security, supposedly the authority to enter the country, apparently I was still flagged. Right? It wasn't about suspicious behavior on my part because they didn't even ask me any questions. There's just a flag on my file, and I was immediately sent to detention in that airport in Montreal.
God, wow.
Yep. So that means I then had 3 hours in pre-clearance. I missed my flight. I was supposed to travel to South Carolina through Chicago. I missed my flight. An hour and a half of that time was just waiting because it's very clear they now have quotas to meet, and they're understaffed to meet the quota. So they're detaining all kinds of people. I didn't even get to my case until about an hour and a half in. At that point, they subjected me to an interview. The interview asked me questions about my attitudes on violent protest. They also asked me about 12 different Muslim-majority countries, if I've ever traveled there, and Israel. They did not ask about Cuba, interestingly. They searched all my items. They unfurled all of my socks. They went through my book page by page. They went through my wallet. I have little notes in my wallet from 5 years ago, so a bit of a pack rat. They read those notes in front of me. I had no idea what they were going to say. Right? It was just pretty disconcerting. Anyway, they went through all of that process. They also took my phone. They forced me to open my phone, and they searched my phone for an hour. And after the guy had gone away with my phone and left me for some time, and by the way, although he told me verbally, he said, "Don't worry, it's just a cursory inspection of your phone," he gave me a pamphlet. And if you read the fine print of the pamphlet, what the pamphlet they give people says is they reserve the right to copy all the materials on your phone in perpetuity, and not only copy them, but distribute them to any U.S. government security agency they want to. So they reserve the right to send the contents of your phone to the FBI, to the CIA, everyone. Okay? So just to be clear, so listeners are aware, that's what you're opening yourself up to if they take your devices in one of these processes. And by the way, if you say no to them, if you try to tell them that you won't open up your phone, the immediate consequence of that is denial of entry, right? So people need to be aware of that. Like, you can say you don't want to open up your phone, but you won't be traveling to the United States if that's your position.
Wow.
Anyway, after that whole process, he did ultimately admit me on that day to the United States. So I missed my flight, of course, and I didn't arrive until a day later to my destination, missed a lot of time at that conference. He also told me, so I asked, listen, now that you've vetted me yet again, does this mean the next time I try to enter the United States, I'll be okay, I'll be in the clear? And he essentially told me, A, he could make no promises. B, when I asked, listen, what if they try to reroute me through Toronto, right, which is a distinct possibility when they're trying to find new flights for you to make it to your destination. He told me, under no circumstances allow them to route you through Toronto, because then I'm going to have to go through pre-clearance again. And he knew if I had to go through pre-clearance again, I'd go through exactly the same process.
My, oh my, that must have been absolutely, I don't want to be dramatic here, but I would call it that it would be a traumatic thing to go through, really. I would say, just listening to your experience, I would be traumatized.
Listen, it is. It's any time like law enforcement officials at any time, right, are putting you in a kind of compromised situation like that, it's deeply unpleasant and disturbing. But here's the thing I think that listeners really need to be aware of in terms of just really understanding what the stakes are. Right? Because at this point, what we've seen across the United States is if you are actually on U.S. territory, right, which is to say at a land border, if you're driving across a land border, or if you're arriving in the United States in an American airport without having gone through pre-clearance. And that's true for most people in the world. Most Canadian airports, right? I believe that this is true in Halifax as well, that Halifax has pre-clearance. But if you were to fly through Billy Bishop Airport, the island airport in Toronto, there is no pre-clearance in that airport, which means that your entry point is the U.S. airport. And if you enter the United States in a land border or in a U.S. airport, they actually have the capability of just sending you to one of their immigration prisons arbitrarily without any due process. That is what they are doing to people right now. So the stakes of an encounter like I had, if you are in one of those sites, are incredibly high. But the difference is with pre-clearance, and I knew this on that occasion in March because I'd done a lot of my own research right after my initial experience in January. The worst case scenario when you're in pre-clearance is that they will deny you entry into the United States. And although that is unpleasant, it's much, much less serious than being sent to one of these immigration prisons. And that's why I'm encouraging people, use pre-clearance, right? If you feel that there's any risk involved, and most people should, about traveling to the United States, but if you feel you have to go to the United States, going through pre-clearance at an airport is the safest way you can go.
My God, what an experience, Nathan. Listen, it's a cautionary tale. I'm glad things worked out for you, but I guess the last question is, are you planning on traveling to the States anytime soon? No, I'm not. This experience, it's clear to me that I am flagged, and I will remain flagged as long as at least this regime remains. And as I said, the risks are too high because the truth is, and they're doing this. They're sending people in the United States, right, to Guantanamo Bay, to El Salvador, to these private, heinous immigration prisons in the U.S. South, like Florida and Louisiana, right? And the truth is, although I can say that I was safer by going through pre-clearance, when you are actually in the United States, at any moment you are subject to the authority of ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement. And if they apprehend you, at this point, we are seeing there is no due process whatsoever. They are abducting people off the street. There was an incident in Massachusetts yesterday where they abducted a man off the street who was with a 12-year-old child, and they abandoned the 12-year-old child on the street. They just left him. They took the caregiver and just left the child, right? So if that's the kind of behavior, no one should feel safe when it comes to these authorities. And knowing that I am flagged, I certainly don't. Wow. Nathan, listen, thanks for sharing your story. It's just very troubling, but thank you for doing this. My pleasure. All right, take care. Wow, that's quite a story. Nathan Kalman-Lamb, University of New Brunswick Sociology Professor. When we come back and chat with Derek Mombourquette, we'll be back. Derek Mombourquette is the interim Liberal leader here in the province of Nova Scotia. Joins us for a chat. Derek, good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing today?
I'm well. Yourself?
I'm well.
Excellent. I saw this story in the Chronicle Herald. I'll just read a bit of it. Nova Scotia Liberals are urging the Houston government to reverse the decision to cut the work activity program at year's end. Tell us about the work activity program.
So the work activity program has been in place for years, and it's a program that is really across the province. There's various locations across Nova Scotia that have provided the program for folks who need some support as they get back into the workforce, the folks that are on income assistance, and it's been successful. I've seen the success of it in the Sydney area as the MLA, and we heard through advocates that essentially they were going to cut the program at the end of 2025. So we're hoping that the government will reconsider that and keep that program going. Okay, what's the annual budget for this? So the annual budget for the program, I don't have the exact number, but it would be specific around how many clients are utilizing it in spaces across the province. So it's in the millions. It supports, as I said, it's supported hundreds of residents over the years to help them get back into the workforce.
Okay, is there empirical data that shows there's a return on investment with this? I guess is what I'm driving at here.
Well, what we know from talking to the organizations is that we know that hundreds of people have used it over decades. Really, we know that people who needed support and that extra push to get back into the workforce, it's really helped them and their families. So any data that would be provided for these programs, we know firsthand the support that people have received. So they've been successful over the years, and quietly the government has decided to cut this without any consultation. So we hope that they'll reverse the decision, or at least tell these folks. And I'm hearing from families that are on the wait list right now for this program what options are going to be there for them moving forward.
Is there anything that they're planning on replacing it with, or is it just a complete withdrawal from the whole thing?
So we haven't heard of what they're looking to replace it with. There was some indication that there may be some consultation that is taking place, but families are reaching out to me who are on that wait list asking what the next steps are. Families haven't heard anything about it, and we haven't heard anything from the organizations that use the program.
Yeah, and it's hard to kind of reduce this type of thing to statistics and empirical data when you're talking about lives and how lives are impacted. And I think that the human story can get lost in data, and perhaps that's what's at play here. What are your thoughts?
Well, you're right. It's a sense of we know this program has been successful. I've seen it firsthand with residents we've supported through my local office in Sydney, and the government has decided to cut this at the end of the year with really no rationale. They've indicated that there may be a decrease in some participation in areas, but my question is why was that decrease? Like, tell us why you're making this decision, and what options are going to be there for these families that will use this program, that are waiting to use this program, and the ones that I've said have been very successful has helped them get back into the workforce.
Yeah, for sure. And again, when you look at the workforce and labor shortages and all that goes with it, I would think that there would be a lot of opportunity to help address that and help lift people out of their current situation.
Well, that's right. So, the poverty and cost of living are big issues in communities across the province, and we want to provide all the supports for people to make that jump into the workforce, to help support their family. And these programs really help. They really give people confidence. They give them particular skills to help them as they look for work and they enter the workforce. So we should be doing more of this, not less of it.
Okay, a spokesperson for the department says that, reading the Chronicle Herald story, says there have been major shifts in the provincial labor market over the more than 20 years that the program has been in existence. Nova Scotians need modern, flexible, and accessible employment services that meet them where they are and prepare them for where their workforce is going. What's your response to that?
Well, my response to that is, tell us what that means. So you have a program that has been successful. You have a program that we know Nova Scotians are utilizing. That statement says, they're going to adjust to current workforce standards and current trends, but explain that rationale to us. Explain, because folks that are coming through programs, whether it's this one or any other support programs to get back into the workforce, people are looking at various career opportunities. So in these programs, this is helping people with their confidence. It's helping them with their skills to go out and look for work, to get into the workforce. So when the department says that, they cut this program. They haven't provided any rationale for doing it. They haven't provided any notice except for the letter that these organizations have received. And we know the families are asking questions because they're supposed to be entering this program.
Okay, so to at this point though, there's no chance of an about face on this or a reversal?
We'll keep asking the question. Right now, there's no indication that they're going to change. Again, we received the word of this throughout the week, just through advocates who found out, and they have provided very little information. So I would hope that they, at least if anything, if they're going to change the program, tell us what it is, tell Nova Scotians what it is, and tell these families what it's going to be, and the families that we're expecting to enter this program as it is.
Okay, Derek, appreciate your time. Thank you.
Hey, I really appreciate it. Thanks.
All right, Derek, take care. Derek Mombourquette, Interim Liberal leader. When we come back and chat with Laurie Turnbull, we'll talk about the new cabinet. We'll be back. All right, joining the show is Laurie Turnbull, Dalhousie University political science professor. Laurie, thanks for doing this. As always, we appreciate your time.
Anytime. Thanks for having me.
All right, so Mark Carney and his new cabinet set to meet this morning. Kind of broad strokes thoughts, I guess, to start.
Yeah. To me, this is a big cabinet, right? He's doing the more traditional, tiered approach. And so 28 ministers plus him, and then 10 secretaries of state. And so it's not like there's 38 full ministers around the table, but at the same time, he's including a lot of people. And I think part of it is that he wanted to keep some of the people from the Trudeau era because they've got the experience. and then partly because he wanted to also add his own people. So you've got a bit of a mix.
Okay, what are some of any surprises? Any real kind of big shockers on this?
Well, a couple of things. Not so much a shocker, but more a point of interest that he moved Jolie out of global affairs and put Anita Anand into what they're now going to call foreign affairs. So they're going back to that old moniker. And I shouldn't say it's old, but it was the original one. Yeah. But that was interesting to me because obviously Jolie has been very much front and center on that file. She's been down to the States a lot. She was part of that team that went down to Mar-a-Lago when Trudeau was still there. She's made some relationships there. And so that's not an insignificant switch out and big promotion for Anand, who had decided she was not going to come back. But then Carney clearly talked her into it, and that's a big reward for her. That's a big step.
How about Sean Fraser? I mean, this is from not running because he needs to spend time with his family. I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but it's I think it needs to be discussed. 40 years old, that said he needed to spend time with his family. Carney convinced him to run again, and now he's the Attorney General, Justice Minister. And I would think that job does not come with a good work-life balance. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, it's not like if you compared it to something like the U.S. file, it's not a whole lot of travel, right? Like whereas Dominic LeBlanc and Anita Anand, I would think, are going to be back and forth to the U.S. all the time. Right. It's not going to be that kind of thing. But Attorney General and Justice Minister is not a lightweight file. I don't know how much Carney is going to do with that. Like with Trudeau, there was a lot for the Justice Minister because when he first started, he wanted to do things like MAID, for example, right? And he wanted to decriminalize marijuana or legalize marijuana. And so that sort of stuff required a whole lot of traffic going through the Justice Department. The other thing is that over the course of the time of the Trudeau government, the approach to appointment of judges was really, really slow on the justice side. And so they ended up with a huge backlog to fill. But I think that's largely been dealt with now. So, I mean, he's also got a few people who are appointed. Like, obviously, crime is a big issue, and I think something that the Conservatives ended up hitting as a point in a way that was more direct and more resonant with people than the Liberals did. And so I think one of the things that Carney is doing is saying, okay, like we're gonna speak to that. And so some of the things that might be happening are like dealing with things like the theft of cars, home invasions, that kind of stuff. But he's also got other people on that, right? Like he's got Robie St is a minister of state to deal with crime. And so depending on how it goes, it could be, it could be some kind of a work-life balance, but because I think most of this, I mean, the big emphasis for Carney is the economy, obviously, and so we'll see how it goes.
Okay, but it's not as though Sean Fraser hit it out of the park with housing or immigration. Some would say that, as a matter of fact, he did a poor job. So why does he have the confidence of Carney, I guess?
I mean, I would say that I don't think Carney's putting that all on Sean Fraser. I think he's not looking at Sean Fraser as the person who is ultimately and singularly responsible for all of that. But at the same time, he was the minister, and he was the Minister of Immigration and then the Minister of Housing. And there's an argument that, we didn't properly manage the whole situation where we're inviting people to come, but we don't have a place for them to live. And so those files are kind of going hand in hand. So now Lena Metlidge-Diab is going to be the Immigration, Refugee, and Citizenship Minister, and so she'll have her hands on that file. So Nova Scotia keeps that one. So that's really interesting. But I think for Fraser, like he was another one. Obviously, said as you said, he was going to leave, and Carney clearly talked him into staying. I think given that riding and the fact that it was redrawn. Fraser had the huge networks he does in the riding. He was probably most suited and most poised to win it for the Liberals because it's not exactly a safe seat for them. And so I'm not surprised to see him get something. Like, I'm not surprised to see him in cabinet. And I don't think this is going to be one of the most public-facing roles at all. I think we'll hear from lots of ministers more than we hear from Fraser, to be honest.
Okay, so Philippe Champagne at finance, and I would think for Mark Carney, this would be he obviously has a real nice knowledge of the economy and finance, and his background speaks for itself. So, what type of dynamic do you think that relationship would be between Champagne and Carney, and how hands-on will Carney be when it comes to monetary or fiscal policy, rather?
Yeah, I mean, so I think to start with your last question first, I think he's going to be entirely hands-on on everything to do with economy, finance. I would not envy anybody who's going to be Carney's finance minister, frankly. Like, have fun going to give Carney advice on finance. Like, it's just, that's going to be very awkward, in my view. Mm-hmm. But Carney and Champagne have a kind of dynamic that is going to be interesting to watch. I mean, they're going to have to be on side with everything. They're going to have to, even if they disagree about some things, they're ultimately going to have to land on the same page. Otherwise, it won't work. But Champagne really helped Carney build a ground game in Quebec. Like, Champagne wanted to be the leader, and he had been actually working at that for years. And when Carney came on, I think, Champagne decided to support him and lent him his networks, lent him his Rolodex, worked to help him get a lot of votes in Quebec. And obviously that was a successful effort. So I think Carney, wants to keep showing Champagne some appreciation to make sure that all stays healthy. And the other thing is that things are going to get very prickly between the West and Quebec and what we do about pipelines and stuff like that. National unity is going to be the thing that's like the fire that's going to burn the whole time. And so he needs ministers who are experienced, who are really good at pulling together some consensus, who are, able to build some support for his ideas and things like that. He needs some people to do that work in Quebec. And so Champagne, Jolie, she's in industry now, which I think is far more, putting her in the kind of position where she can be Quebec focused and, work on some of the pieces that are going to be required to bring people together.
Were you surprised that Chrystia Freeland made the cut?
Little, but what I was told is they were afraid of a Sheila Copps situation. Right. That if they didn't put her in cabinet, she was going to blow down, and so it's just easier. Which that's a wrong thing to say, and it doesn't mean. And I'm not trying to suggest that she's not a capable minister and she doesn't bring a lot to the table. Obviously, she does. And Carney and Freeland do have a friendship outside of politics, but at the same time, she is the most associated of anybody with the Trudeau brand, other than Trudeau himself. Yeah. And so when you talk about turning the page, it's a weird way to do it.
Yeah, especially when Bill Blair was ousted and Jonathan Wilkinson were ousted, and I don't know. I just think that it was a surprise. Anybody else left out that you were surprised that didn't make the cut?
Karina Gould, I thought was that one's a bit awkward for me because I thought, all right, Freeland ran against you for the leader. You put her in. Neither Freeland nor Gould really got anywhere near what Carney achieved in terms of support. So it's not like you have to bring in your competitors to try to keep the party together, right? The party is 100% behind Carney. However, Gould represents something, in terms of the progressive side of the party, a younger side of the party. Like, she actually brings a constituency with her who ultimately might have all ended up voting for Carney in the end. But I think she's somebody who could represent some bridge to whatever the future of the party is going to be. And deciding to leave her out just strikes me as pointed, right? Like, especially when she did run for leader, right? Like, come on, like she's got profile. But anyway, all right, he decided not to. Maybe
he views her as a threat of some sort.
Yeah, she went harder at him than anybody else in the leaders' debate. She was more critical of his corporate affiliations. She was more. I think she, got a few more pokes at him, and maybe he remembers that and decided he's not going to reward it.
Okay, Carney seems to be growing in not that he was not a confident person before, but he seems to be fitting into the role quite rapidly, in my opinion. I'm not wooing over him or anything like that. It's just my observation. It seems to me that he's liking the role of prime minister. What are your thoughts on Carney and his style?
Yeah, I mean, I think he is too. He seemed the mood yesterday at the swearing in was happy, it seemed to me. Like, he seems comfortable in the role. I think he has an easier time with the press now. At first, it struck me that he was awkward. He was very prickly. He took offense to anything they asked him about himself. And it was like, all right, you're not a CEO anymore, right? Like, you got to put yourself in this context. But it seems like he's growing into it. I also think he's had some wins. He hasn't had long enough time to have big wins, but the meeting with Trump went well. He didn't get pushed around. He was able to come back and say he reset the tone of the relationship in a way that was constructive, and everything Trump has said has corroborated that. I think the key is going to be, okay, now what? Right? Like, when you can't go to the White House again and not have something to come back with, I think. Like, he set the tone. Okay, now what are we going to do about the tariffs? What are we going to do about trade? So that'll be the expectation. I think the expectations of him are very high.
And lastly, Pierre Poilievre, and he offered his commentary after the fact, and he just seems to be weakened in some way without having a seat, and kind of the same routine. Not to beat up on Poilievre, but I don't know. It seems to me the Conservatives need something fresh or new or something other than him right now. What are your thoughts on Poilievre?
I agree with you. Like, I think it's a really tough call for the party in a way because, yeah, at the risk of sounding totally uncharitable, he's a broken record. He keeps saying the same things over and over again. And now he's outside the House, which really undermines the force of what he says, no matter what he says, I think.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem to me he's showing up much differently. It seemed to me in the first days he showed some humility, and it must have been really lousy for him to be making calls to see who supports him. And, that's a lousy position to be in, and I don't envy it. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it seems to me he's taking the same old song and dance, and he's going to go run in the most conservative riding in the country just to make sure they win it. And the whole look is just, I don't know, like, it's too early to tell whether they're actually going to do anything different. And people like Chris D'Entremont, to give him a lot of credit, he went on David Cochran's show, and talked about, the tone needs to change. We need to make some changes, not necessarily to the leader, but to the style. But the leader sets the style. So what is going to be next?
Yeah, and Andrew Scheer, you know what you're going to get with him. That's not changing, right?
Oh, yeah. Speaking of broken records, I think you know what that is.
Yeah, exactly. Lori, appreciate your time as always. Thanks so much.
Anytime, Todd.
All right, take care. Lori Turnbull, Dalhousie University Political Science Professor. Something that you can weigh in on when we open the phone lines between noon and 1 today. House calls with Dr. John Gillis when we come back. All right, it's a Wednesday. It's just after 11 o'clock. That means it's time for House Calls with Dr. John Gillis. And if you have a health-related question or concern, give us a call at 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. Dr. Gillis, with a wealth of knowledge and experience, ready to give you a hand if he can on the phone. 902-405-6000. That is the way to get in on it. Again, a health-related questions or concern. Dr. John Gillis, the Leaf fans probably have some anxiety right now. Can you help them with that?
Oh, I don't know, man. I have it too. I'm going to the game tonight, and I'm going to get there 40 minutes before puck drop. I got to race downtown. First world problem, very much, but it's a lot of moving parts today, including my anxiety level about the game. But anyway, hope springs eternal.
Wow, you have good seats?
Yeah, they actually are good. Well, in the upper deck, down below, I have to sell a kid, and I like both of my kids. So.
Pretty exciting. What's the atmosphere in the city like? Pretty exciting. A lot of excitement, I suppose, coupled with, as mentioned, a lot of anxiety with the Leafs.
Yeah, not there yet. I literally land at 6:20 p.m. I'm going straight to the arena. So.
Nice. Okay, well, thanks for doing this today. We appreciate it. And again, if you'd like to talk to Dr. John Gillis, 902-405-6000. That is the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. What's the staffing been like what's the business been like at the ER in Dartmouth?
Yeah, I was there Monday night. It was typical crazy, a weird night. A lot of complex stuff, like hard to treat people and help them and send them home. I mean, I think I did 4 blood transfusions in a 6-hour shift, which is unusual. Just a lot of complicated stuff, and it just it is what it is. It comes in waves, and you deal with it. But it's still remarkably busy.
All right, I saw a story, a case of a whooping cough confirmed at junior high in Dartmouth. Any concerns about whooping cough for those who don't know what this is? Give everybody an overview and how contagious is it and how concerning is it or not?
Yeah, well, it's another one of these things that there's a vaccine for it, but people have buggered off on their vaccine compliance. This is one we give with tetanus every 10 years. Tetanus, diphtheria, whooping cough, but either people aren't getting their original vaccines or they're not getting their boosters, and this is a preventable illness, and it's coming back. And for the most part, it's not life-threatening, but it can be in people who are sick or elderly. But it can put people down for a long time, and it just comes back to there's no need for this. Get vaccinated, get your boosters. It's not a conspiracy theory. This stuff works, and we hadn't seen whooping cough in a long time, except for the odd, rare case. But there was no break in New Brunswick, and now apparently it's here.
What ages are most subject or most impacted by this?
Yeah, usually you see it in older people, but again, we're starting to see it in younger people because they're not vaccinated or didn't get their primary series or they didn't get their boosters. So, that's what we're starting to see a little bit of in New Brunswick and here as well.
Okay. Again, 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. If you'd like to chat with Dr. John Gillis, if you have a health-related question or concern, 902-405-6000. When might somebody be concerned about whooping cough, and what are the symptoms that are hallmarks to this issue?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to explain. I mean, whooping is sort of a sound. It's sort of which I won't try to imitate, but it's sort of a loud sound that sounds like someone's whooping when you cough, as opposed to what you think of as a traditional cough. It may just present like any other viral or bacterial respiratory illness, but again, the cough can be quite intense and debilitating. And if that's what you have, it does require treatment with antibiotics. But again, highly, highly preventable.
And is COVID still kicking around? It is, eh?
Oh, it's all kicking around. COVID, influenza, RSV, adenovirus, you name it. And again, encourage people to get the vaccines where they can, stay home if you're sick, use judgment. We still get a lot of people who are very frustrated. They're 25, healthy, and they come to the ER, with a cough and a little bit of a fever, and they wait for 6 hours, and then we tell them it's viral and there's nothing we can do. And we don't swab everybody anymore because there's no point in it if they're not sick, meaning their oxygen's normal, their vitals are normal, and people get frustrated by that. And it is true. As a hater once pointed out to me that yes, it's possible for a 25-year-old person to get very sick, and that's true. If you feel like you're actually struggling to breathe or having chest pains or more than just what we think of as cold symptoms, then yeah, by all means you should be checked. But it's that balance of choosing wisely when to come to the hospital, and it's not like we mind seeing people with mild respiratory illnesses that are viral, but there's usually very little we can do, and people do get quite frustrated themselves, and they take it out on staff, which is unhelpful, shall we say.
Yeah, absolutely. Vaccine fatigue is a real thing, though, is it not? People are a bit fatigued with vaccinations. Not to say that's a reason not to get it, but it's a factor, I think. What are your thoughts?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I see a lot of people who have had 2-3 COVID vaccines. They're like, why didn't you get another one? Oh, well, I had it. I'm fine. And most people are. But it again comes back to keeping yourself healthy, keeping other people healthy, and trying to minimize sick time, downtime, all those things. And still encourage people to get vaccinated. I still hear all the time, I'm not getting the flu vaccine because I've never had the flu, and that's not great reasoning. Most people have had a heart attack have never had a heart attack before. So most people have had a brain aneurysm have never had a brain aneurysm before. This is the first time for these things, and they are preventable or minimizable. So let's try to do that.
Absolutely. And of course, measles, same old story, right? I know we talk about this every week, but hesitancy with vaccinations is a major factor here.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been interesting the last couple of weeks, doing the mix of things I do. I have seen more people, probably in people, my age, or, I think it's if you're born 70 to 96, you're recommended, you probably only had one MMR, mumps, measles, rubella vaccine, so you're recommended to get another. And, I've had a fair number of people asking us for that, which, is a positive sign that, the message is getting out there. So that's good.
Okay. Stick right there. 902-405-6000. If you'd like to chat with Dr. John Gillis, he's ready and willing to give you a hand. Health related, of course. 902-405-6000. House Calls continues when we come back. All right, House Calls continues with Dr. John Gillis. Give us a call at 902-405-6000 if you have a health-related question or concern. Ron's giving us a call. Hello, Ron.
Good morning. Dr. Gillis, I've had this condition now for about 3 weeks. Started with a pain behind my right shoulder blade, going up to my shoulder and neck, moving down my right arm to my elbow, and my thumb and my thumb and first two fingers feel like they're having constant electrical shocks in them. The tip of my index finger is currently numb. So for the first couple of weeks, I was kind of maxing out on Advil and Tylenol each day, and looked up the symptoms on the internet. I know that. And seems to be a pinched nerve or evidence of a pinched nerve. I guess my question to you is whether or not an ultrasound or an X-ray might reveal anything.
The short answer is no and no. Ultrasounds are not used to assess nerves typically. X-rays are used to assess bones and a few other things, but also not nerves. So, I mean, that sounds like a pinched nerve, in your neck, or it can be in your hand if it's your fingers. But if it's going down your arm, it's probably coming from the neck. If it's just your hand, it may be if it's just your hand only, it could be localized to the hand. But the only imaging that's going to help with that would be really an MRI of the neck, or what we call an EMG, electromyogram, a nerve conduction study, which helps us diagnose things like median nerve numbness, carpal tunnel syndrome, effectively. So to answer your question, an X-ray or an ultrasound, pretty useless for these things. You'd be looking at MRI or an EMG.
Okay, so in terms of painkillers, I understand that there is a specific painkiller for nerve pain that might be more effective than Advil or Tylenol. Is that correct?
Yeah, and just quickly, sorry, they do sometimes do ultrasounds if they're looking just for carpal tunnel, but it's, typically we'd look at MRs of the neck or the EMG studies, but an ultrasound for the median nerve is possible, just to be clear. That's not as commonly done. Yeah, there are a number of drugs for nerve pain. Pregabalin, also known as Lyrica, or gabapentin, which are similar drugs, are commonly used. And some of the old antidepressants like nortriptyline and amitriptyline. There's a few others, some of the newer antidepressants. There's one called Cymbalta that we also use for nerve pain. So there's a few different options. Sort of key to try and understand, where the pain is coming from, so it can be, narrowed down and addressed. And meds can help, therapy can help. Sometimes, if it is a serious neck thing, surgery is indicated. That's usually reserved for intractable pain that can't be settled down conservatively. People with carpal tunnel, surgery is fairly common. But again, trying to get the diagnosis is important.
So it seems to be centered. The main problem is kind of around the side and top of my right shoulder blade. I have a massage appointment for later today, but also I will make an appointment with my nurse practitioner to review the meds and possible imaging. So thank you very much.
Good.
Okay, Ron. Good luck, bud.
Good day.
Take care. 902-405-6000. Bill's giving us a call. Hello, Bill.
How you doing? I started off with one question, but then I got into two here, but they're both quick ones. First of all, I'm getting a lot of cracking in my neck and the bones. They're different, not just one place, a couple of sides. That's the first question. I wonder what's that's all about.
You mean what's causing it?
Yeah, I mean, what can I do about it, or what is it? What's going on?
Well, I mean,
what would be giving me these cracking noises?
So it sounds silly, but it's often from the release of actual air or gas bubbles from the joints themselves, or from things rubbing against each other. Most of the time, it's nothing serious, and it's just something that happens over time with the interaction of the joints and the fluid that are in there. So it's all in the neck.
It's all in the neck, and it's fairly frequent here. I never had this before. There's something new.
Yeah, so most of the time it's benign. If you're not having pain, I wouldn't worry too much about it. Strengthening, stretching, improving your range of motion can help. The fountain of youth, move to Grand Cayman and, become 30 years old again, that'll help too. But if you can't do that, just keep as mobile as you can. Don't cheer for the Leafs because that'll tense your neck up and make it worse.
The other question, Doctor, is kind of an odd one, but COVID, when that was really hot, my girlfriend and I went in and we got the needle or whatever the heck was, or patch or whatever it was. But it was so funny, and I don't know if anybody else much, or we had many more people. What happened was we were okay, we got the treatment there that day. Next day, both of us had COVID. I was just wondering if you had much of that sort of a thing.
When you say you both had COVID, you mean you were tested and you tested positive?
Yeah.
Or you didn't feel well. Which?
No. They tested, and we both had COVID. But it was so funny, like I say, not one of us, but both of us got the COVID the next day after the needle.
Yeah, so, the way the vaccine is designed, it's not going to give you COVID because of its nature. It's an mRNA vaccine, so it works with your body to prevent infection. So almost certainly you were exposed a couple days prior, and unfortunately it was a bit of a bad coincidence that you got it before your immunity kicked in. So that's probably what happened. And, the fact that you both got it means, well, you were both together, probably got it at the same time, or one gave it to the other. Does that make sense?
Have you heard of other people like that?
I have not, no.
Oh. Okay, Doctor, I appreciate it.
Okay, Bill.
Thanks, Todd.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000, that is the way to reach us. Rouse calls, again, 902-405-6000. Dr. Gillis, wanted to ask you about this story. I talked about it earlier in the week. Get the story off the CBC website. Rollout of electronic medical record system delayed until December. Nova Scotia signed a $365 million deal for the system in 2023. So one person, one record. This is obviously would be advantageous and a great system when it's up and running. But it's quite complex. Trying to amalgamate as many as 80 systems, from what I understand. And so what are your thoughts on the delay? I guess first of all.
Well, it's not a problem that's localized to here. There's been, Ontario's had multiple train wrecks trying to do this, and multiple problems: changing technology, changing systems, changing software, cost overruns. Privacy is obviously paramount. You can't have people's medical records getting out there, and making sure that they're secure, they can't be hacked. And again, merging in data. How do you put all the data in? And it is a frustrating thing. I think progress is being made, and I guess we'll do our best to wait and see. Hopefully it's there soon, but it's quite important. Yeah,
I would think that when it comes to efficiency and doing your job, it would be a huge advantage to have one person, one record. I think that's pretty clear, right?
Yeah. Look, even in the hospital, it's not too bad. But if I want to look up X-rays outside the hospital, I have to download this, download that, get multiple VPNs and passwords. I have to add access to other areas. I was trying to find an X-ray from somebody, a rugby player that had hurt his wrist and it was done in the valley. I was having an impossible time pulling it up in Halifax. The system would not find it for whatever reason. So I don't know if it was a glitch or what it was, but it's just even little things like that in our own province, in our hospitals, can be challenging. And again, effort is important in these matters. I tried last year to get the system set up so I could look at X-rays outside the hospital, and it was I gave up after the fourth or fifth attempt when I was having trouble or not getting through to who I needed to. Something I'm going to probably go back to, but the easier it is to access information, the easier it is to provide care for people. We do have what we need, but if it was easier, it would be better, for sure.
And of course, privacy and hacking is always a concern. You mentioned that.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, you see data breaches all the time, and people's personal information is their personal information. It's nobody's business, and when we log in at the hospital, it's password protected, and you're sworn by your oath to protect people's information at all costs. But if it's on the web and look, and I understand why the restrictions are in place. But for example, I have a system that I use in my clinic, which is a TELUS system called MedAccess. It's a secure, encrypted, web-based system that I can access from anywhere, from any internet connection. I don't have that ability to do with NS Health files. If I want to look up X-rays that I've done in the ER or follow up on something. Now, again, there are ways to do it, but it's cumbersome. We're getting there, and good efforts are being made, and a lot of good stuff is happening. I also want to mention, fortunately, tore a ligament in my thumb last night at rugby. I was in the assessment center in Bears Lake this morning, and that place is really sharp, really nice, and really well run. Good parking, and just kudos to the folks working there, and I think the three governments now who were involved in starting it and getting it moving. So it's take a win and take a bow on that one.
Interesting. Okay, stick right there. 902-405-6000. House calls continues when we come back.
Thanks.
All right, House Calls continues with Dr. John Gillis. So to reach us is 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. Rachel's giving us a call. Hello, Rachel.
Hi there. Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
So a couple of years back, I was being assessed as an organ donor. And part of that assessment involved an oral glucose tolerance test. And the outcome of this test was that I have reactive hypoglycemia. I don't have diabetes, but my blood sugar goes super, super low whenever I eat something that's sugary. And other than finding that out, I really wasn't told anything else about this condition or whether or not there's anything I should do differently. And I was just wondering if the doctor had any insight or advice on the condition or what I should do.
So I guess my first question is, you said you were being tested to be an organ donor. Why?
Well, I wanted to donate my kidney to a friend of mine. And part of the testing was this OGTT, this test, which otherwise I never would have had.
Yeah, I mean, I have no idea why they would do that. I mean, I can understand if they're looking for kidney problems. Maybe it's just a standard panel they do. If they're looking for other organ systems.
I think they're trying to make sure you don't have diabetes. I think that's all. It's just to rule out whether or not you had diabetes. So they do this test. I'm not sure.
No, that's fair. I can't figure how that would affect you giving a kidney to somebody, but, parking that. I guess the short answer is if you're not having symptoms, if you're not noticing you're feeling weak or lightheaded or, dizzy after you eat sugary things, that's a bit paradoxical that your sugar would drop after you eat sugar. But what can happen is some people have a excessive response. They get an insulin surge or a cortisol surge, and they can actually drop their sugar. For most people, perhaps in your case, it's something they detected when they tested it, but it's not affecting you practically. So unless you're noticing a problem, I wouldn't worry too much about it. If you're noticing at certain times with certain foods that, you're not feeling well or lightheaded or what have you, that would be a reason to maybe, test your sugar. What's happening here when I feel like this, and you test it and you find your sugar's too low, that would be a reason to, perhaps moderate your diet, make some changes to your diet. But typically, there's not a whole lot you would do or could do other than, watching your intake of carbs and when you take them, how you take them, that sort of thing. Does that make sense?
Okay. Absolutely it does. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Okay, Rachel, thanks for the call. Good luck. Take care. 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us for house calls. If you have a health-related question or concern, 902-405-6000. Dr. Gillis, I wanted to get your take on this story. I'll read a bit of it. Newfoundland and Labrador's premier says the government will end the province's controversial tax on sugar-sweetened beverages. The tax added 20 cents per liter to sugary drinks, including pop-sweetened fruit-flavored juices, slushies, and non-diet fountain sodas. What's your opinion on this type of tax?
My general opinion is they're expensive to implement and enforce, and I'm not sure they do a whole lot unless you can demonstrate a reduction in usage and or that the tax money is being demonstrably routed to other programs and helping people. Now again, I didn't see the story. Does it say they're doing it because it's not working, or is this a political decision?
Yeah, I think all of the above, right? I don't think there's any empirical evidence that would back it up, and I think it's unpopular politically.
Yeah, so that's the perfect storm. I mean, politicians will sometimes do things that are unpopular if they're demonstrably working, but in this case, it doesn't seem to be well liked, and it may not be doing anything. I mean, people want their sugar load. They seem to be willing to pay the price. Yeah,
and where's it end, right? I mean, drive-throughs, McDonald's, Burger King. I mean, if you're going to start picking things that are bad for you and taxing them, you could never stop. There could be no end, ostensibly.
Yeah, absolutely. And, political suicide for some of these things. I mean, the current governments federally and provincially are popular right now, but try and tax donaires, a war would ensue.
For sure. 902-405-6000. Robert's giving us a call. Hello, Robert.
Hey, Todd. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
Dr. John, got a silly question for you. Well, not silly. Drives me crazy. I've been diagnosed, I guess, with tinnitus, and probably 10 years or more. And it used to be occasional in the year sort of thing, and I could deal with it. But lately, over the last probably year or so, it's constant 24 hours and more like a buzzing, but it doesn't sound like it's in the ear so much. It sounds like it's in the head. And when I went down to do some weights, and I'm lifting a few weights and I'm putting pressure on, my left cheek is sort of like cramping up and going in an odd position. Is this tinnitus actually supposed to be in the head like that 24 hours a day?
Well, so no, it's not supposed to be. I mean, it's not what we consider a normal condition, but for some people, it is. It's different for everybody, and people describe it very differently. Some describe it as coming and going, some describe it as constant, but the level goes up and down. People describe it as buzzing, hissing, ringing, different things. Really, the key is to determine if there's anything that's modifiable, if it's being, added to by an infection, if it's being added to by medications, to make sure there's not something structural, something else, like you said, in your jaw or brain. And then, if those things are rolled out, to look at, and it's not an easy thing to treat. There are some meds that help. There are some, white noise devices and types of hearing aids that can help cancel out some of it. But it's not an easy problem to deal with. And, the starting point is, talk to your own health practitioner, sometimes getting a hearing test to see, what degree of hearing loss or change there is. And, talking to an ear, nose, and throat specialist if possible. But again, it's a tough problem to treat. And it often gets worse over time. But you want to make sure there's not something preventable or fixable that's contributing to it.
Yeah, and I did all those steps that you're just talking about too, and I had the hearing aids with. Even when I put in the sound things in with the hearing aids, it doesn't take away or mask the hissing so much. It's still there. Very uncomfortable when you're watching TV, doing whatever you're doing. But I just want to know. And the only drug I take is for blood pressure, and I'll probably try to see if I can go off that after I see my doctor, and I don't know if that would have any bearing on such thing.
Probably not, no.
Okay. Anyway, thank you very much, Doctor. Thank you, Todd. Have a great day.
Okay, Robert, take care. 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us for house calls. With Dr. John Gillis, we've got the doctor to the top of the hour. If you have a health-related question or concern, give us a call at 902-405-6000. House calls continues when we come back. This call continues with Dr. John Gillis, 902-405-6000. That is the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000 if you have a health-related question or concern. Brian's giving us a buzz. Hello, Brian.
Hi. How you doing?
Well, you?
Good. So I had a question for Dr. John. I gave up smoking about 6 years ago, roughly, and ever since I've given up smoking, I've had trouble sleeping, and I've had I've been finding it really hard, shortness of breath and tired all the time, fatigued. And even if, I started taking sleeping pills and to help me sleep. And even when I get like a 8-9 hour sleep, I wake up, I feel like I'm just really tired. I feel like going back to sleep again. Throughout the day, I'm just really tired and dragged out. If I walk up a flight of stairs, I'm really winded. I don't understand. I figured giving up smoking would be a lot healthier. I'd make me feel a lot healthier and be better, but I just don't get it. I walk about right now. I'm trying to lose weight, and I put on, about 40 pounds when I gave up smoking. But I walk about 10,000 steps a day, and I'm trying to get healthier, but it doesn't seem to be helping any.
Oh, fair enough. So it wasn't weed you gave up smoking. That might have been why you stopped sleeping well. If you were knocking yourself out.
No,
you mean
no, I don't.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
Yeah.
You're talking about cigarettes.
Yeah.
So look, quitting smoking is always I can't think of a scenario where it's not a positive scenario for your lungs, for your risk of stroke and heart attack and all those things. People can gain weight after they quit smoking, because smoking for some people, it's a distraction, it's a diversion, it's a hobby. And sometimes people, when they stop smoking, they eat more. So certainly weight gain, can sap your energy by itself, but you're going to want to look at, and I would imagine you've already looked at some of these things, making sure you're not anemic, that your blood count's not down, making sure that you don't have a thyroid problem, making sure you're not diabetic, making sure, just kind of basic metabolic stuff. Testosterone gets, way overplayed. There's a lot of middle-aged men who want to be 20 again that, don't need testosterone, but there are some that do, some that have generally low testosterone, and that can cause, fatigue and, difficulty, with energy and other issues as well. So probably important to consider those things if you haven't already, and maybe you have.
Okay, no, I haven't had my testosterone tested or thyroid or anything like that.
So that's some low hanging fruit right there.
So, okay.
And keeping moving is. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I had my blood work done on a regular basis. I have a high cholesterol as well, right? So I have some blockage. So it's I get all my regular blood work done, but I have never had my testosterone or thyroid checked. So.
Yeah, so those are a few things you could look at. Hope that helps.
Okay,
Brian, right. Good luck. Take care. 902-405-6000. When it comes to blood testing, it's the thyroid. That's usually, I shouldn't say usually, how often is that included in the testing, Dr. Gillis?
Often is what, sorry?
The testing for thyroid, blood work, how often is that included in blood work?
Well, it depends on, someone's age, what their symptoms are. It's variable. I would say it's a common thing to check in middle-aged people who, particularly if they're, complaining of fatigue and that sort of thing. By the same token, we, in some cases over-order blood tests on people on a regular basis, just to see. And, we forget that, a panel of blood tests can cost, $500 a pop, which, maybe that doesn't sound like much, but if you do that on a few thousand people, it adds up pretty quickly. So it's, doing the right thing selectively for the right people in the right circumstance at the right time.
Absolutely. 902-405-6000. I wanted to get your take on this story before we run out of time. It's off our website. A global study from UNICEF suggests many Canadian kids are unhappy with social struggles, such as bullying and difficulty making friends, among the sources of their anguish. UNICEF's 19th report card suggests 1 in 5 youth in Canada face frequent bullying, 1 in 5 are lonely, and 1 in 4 struggle to make friends. It blames bullying in particular for a drop in life satisfaction reported by 15-year-olds, down 3 percentage points to 76% in 2018. So I guess the reason why I'm bringing this up, Dr. Gillis, you're raising young kids and this age cohort. What are your thoughts, I guess, on kids and activity and social media? Because I don't know that we want to blame everything on social media and smartphones, but what are your thoughts on raising kids, and what advice do you give to people when it comes to their kids' well-being?
Well, the hyper social media driven world with ample access to information and communication, has really provided a platform for, bullying and negativity to be magnified. It's very easy to post a picture of somebody, to send a message about somebody instantly to lots of people. So that can be dangerous. And kids also, go down rabbit holes on the internet. I think we all do. Mm-hmm. But, perhaps as you get older, you have a little more context and a little more experience to know, if what the context of what you're reading and seeing is. Is it real? Is it fake? Is it funny? Is it dangerous? Is it racist? Is it misogynist? All these things. And, it's tough to filter all that out. I think, I'd be a hypocrite if I didn't say I didn't spend a fair bit of time on my phone, but, mm-hmm. I see it, with kids who, running screen times of 8-10 hours a day. That's all they do. And that's, it's not healthy for interaction, personal development, and, for, building relationships. So it's finding balance and all those things, and trying to, interact with kids as they grow, do things with them that don't involve, staring at TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, and all those things.
Activity, though, physical activity is so crucial, I would think, at any age, but in particular young people. What are your thoughts on physical activity?
Look, I mean, I'm a huge believer in in the first place, it does not have to be high performance sport. Being active is good for your health. It's good for your, well-being. It's good for your future. It, releases natural endorphins that make people feel better. Taking it further to, people who go into organized sports, keeps them busy. I often say, when I was in high school, I didn't have time to get up to no good really, because, I was going from studying to one practice to the next practice to the next tournament. And, it builds relationships. It builds, discipline, and it's important. And, you want kids to do that. Kids who don't want to be involved in physical activity or sports, you don't want to shame them. You want to encourage them, but there are kids that, just don't do anything. They spend all their time, locked in a room, staring at the phone, playing video games. And, for a whole host of reasons, that's not healthy.
And body shaming, that's a real thing, right, at any age. But I would think teens, this is something that is an issue that should be addressed, in particular probably with girls.
Yeah, I would say so, but I mean, I think it affects boys as well. But society has created unfair and inappropriate stereotypes of what people are supposed to look like. Often, especially women, which is wrong and inappropriate. And it's our job to try and teach our kids to accept people for who they are. To try and reinforce positive health choices and exercise choices, but that not everybody is going to be skinny, whatever that means. It's an arbitrary term. And to accept people for who they are, but, while at the same time, encouraging, healthy eating and healthy activity.
Okay, and on a closing note, predictions for the game. Obviously, you're there to watch them win. You think they'll win tonight, the Leafs, in all seriousness? You think the Leafs, obviously, they have a shot. They're pretty tight. These teams are pretty even, in my opinion. What's your take?
Matthews in overtime. 3-2.
Wow, Austin Matthews, eh? Can you imagine the excitement? Well, hopefully you're right, Dr. Gillis. Thanks for doing this, and enjoy the game.
Talk soon. Bye-bye.
All right, take care. That's Dr. John Gillis. That's House Calls. We do that each and every Wednesday from 11 until 12. Now we've got some time for you. What is on your mind today? What perhaps you have a prediction on the Leafs tonight? Do you think the Leafs can get it done? Maybe you're an Oilers fan. What about the Jets? Maybe you're a Dallas fan. Maybe you're a Panthers fan. When I kicked off the show, I said I don't know one Florida Panthers fan. I honestly don't. And if I do, I've forgotten about you. But perhaps there's some true Panthers fans out there who want to see Florida win. What's your take on the game? And, of course, lots of other things more pressing, more urgent, including Mark Carney and his cabinet. They're meeting this morning. What's your take on the Carney cabinet or whatever else you've got in your mind? The way to reach us is 405-6000. Something else that perhaps some of you might want to weigh in on. We kicked off the show talking with Peggy Cameron of the group Friends of Halifax Common, and she said that a recent meeting concerning the widening of Robie Street drew over 100 residents, and a panel spoke on this, and they're dead set against the widening of Robie Street, $200 million at least, and you could bet that they'll run into all kinds of cost overruns with this. But Peggy Cameron says that they are going to displace a lot of people who are vulnerable in vulnerable situations when it comes to housing, and a lot of trees will be taken down as well, very mature trees, and they're dead set against the widening of Robie to create bus lanes. What's your take on that, or anything else you got in your mind? Again, the way to reach us is 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. I got some other things in the pile as well that we can get to. But again, give us a call. Open lines for you, 902-405-6000. An open hour when we come back. All right, so taking your calls until 1 o'clock. Open lines for you. Give us a call at 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. Prime Minister Mark Carney is meeting with his new cabinet this morning on Parliament Hill. Of course, he shook up the cabinet yesterday by moving some key players into new positions, promoting 24 new faces in a movement to signal change at the top. Dominic LeBlanc will spearhead Canada-U.S. relations in the wake of American President Donald Trump's tariffs and threats of annexation. Anita Anand is the new Foreign Affairs Minister. Bill Blair was dropped. David McGuinty as well. And, of course, Sean Fraser is the Attorney General, the Justice Minister. And that was I don't know if it was a surprise or not, but certainly quite a change of events from when he was not going to run because of family obligations. Anyway, listen, I don't want to beat this up any longer. It is what it is. Nonetheless, Mark Carney's got confidence in Sean Fraser. So, look, I suppose that's all that matters right now, right? When all is said and done, I want to see a productive cabinet, a productive government, and a good government. That's what we really need in this country at this point is unity. In a lot of ways, right? We need some unity. And look, Pierre Poilievre, I get it. His whole ambition in life is to criticize all things that the Liberals do or decide to do. And look, and I get it. You need a good opposition. That's a key plank in any democracy, in any parliament. But that said, I mean, let's give this government a chance, perhaps. Just maybe they might do a good job. Maybe Mark Carney might be. I think personally, Mark Carney is a huge upgrade from Justin Trudeau. A massive upgrade, just in his style, in his leadership ability, in his background, and I know that he's got his issues with his business dealings, and nobody is without that. Look, anybody who's done what Mark Carney's done, you're going to have some warts in your history. But that said, the question is, can he get the job done? Is he the guy to lead this country right now? And look, he looks pretty comfortable in the role as far as I can tell. And my attitude at this point, and I'm not a partisan person. I know that some of you believe that I am, but I am not partisan at all. I just want to see this country led properly and good governance. That when all is said and done, is my desire. And I guess I'll throw caution to the wind and say, let's give Carney a chance and let's give this government a chance and see what they can do. I know that conservatives out there are chewing their steering wheels right now, hearing that, thinking there's no way he's corrupt, that all things liberals are horrible. But look, folks, don't we want the best for the country? Instead of backbiting and all that goes with it? We see what's happening in the United States. The country's literally being torn apart right now in the U.S. because of partisanship. It's literally being torn apart. Ideology is destroying the United States. We're seeing it happen. Earlier in the show, I chatted with a sociology professor from the University of New Brunswick, a very, very articulate guest. And he had recently traveled to the United States and had a horrendous experience. and with customs. I mean, what's happening in the U.S. right now is absolutely frightening. And we don't need that here in Canada. We need unity as far as I'm concerned. I'm not saying blindly follow along with the Liberals and what Mark Carney has to say. Of course, scrutinize and not be partisan. But maybe, just maybe, he might do a decent job. What's your take on this or anything else you have in your mind? The way to reach us is 902-405-6000. Carlos, hello.
Hi, Todd. How are you doing?
I'm well, you?
Good. Well, to see Freeland there, wow.
Yeah, that was a bad choice in my opinion. It really was.
Like, what kind of credibility do you think
I agree.
she will have when she's going to talk about internal trade with Alberta, with Saskatchewan? What kind of credibility do you think she will have? It gives this idea that they are telling the conservative, haha, we want too bad for you. Like, why keep her there? That was very odd.
I can't disagree with you there. I really thought that she should have been shuffled out of cabinet for sure. I agree with you.
Yeah. One surprise that I had was not to see former Quebec Finance Minister Carson Layton, who did great job 2014, 2018. He delivered a balanced budget in Quebec, not an easy task in that province there, and he, according to the NDP former leader Tom Mulcair, he's the creme de la creme, he's on the top left, and he was not there. That is odd. That I thought it was odd because he's a fiscal conservative who has credibility from the NDP to the bloc, and he was not there. And I was like, wow, he would be someone who would look at Carney and say, how are we going to pay for all of this housing? Like, he has this capacity, and he was not there. And for me, it was very surprising. Give this idea that he wanted a yes prime minister ministries. Like, he wanted to be a focus, yes, but a yes prime minister, that kind of ministries. And I don't know, but yes, let's see how it goes.
Yeah, okay, Carlos. I agree with you on the Freeland issue. I really do. Thanks for the call.
Thank you.
All right, 902-405-6000. Again, I just don't know why what Chrystia Freeland is just so associated with the old Liberal brand. It's just turn the page but whatever, they're friends. I would hope that he did make the decision based on the fact that they're friends, but it probably came into a factor. 902-405-6000. Ira, hello.
Hi. What businesses does Carney have in the U.S.?
Well,
he moved one of his.
Yeah, he moved his main company to the United States. I think it was last year.
So I think Carney should move that back to Canada now, where he's our leader, and pay his fair share of taxes to Canadians like we're all taxed. When he does that, I'll have faith in him. But until then, I don't trust the snake.
Well, he's got a blind trust right now, so he can't move the company. Even if he wanted to, because he's not managing it anymore.
He's not managing it, but it's still someone's managing it that could move it back to Canada and make it look better.
All right, so you obviously don't trust the guy at all. You're not willing to give him a chance at all.
No, he's gonna use our tax dollars and spend our tax dollars, and he's avoiding his tax dollars by going to the U.S. So we're going to trust someone that cheats our tax system to run our government. It's a horrible choice. I can't believe we made it. I don't trust him. Never did.
Okay, well, look, I hear you, Ira, and I understand your hesitation. But that said, look, this is, and I'm not justifying it at all, but this is something that just about, if not all billionaires end up doing is sheltering their money offshore. The Irvings do it. I mean, there's a long list of it.
Well, it's maybe time we take a little bit of a Trump approach and bring business back to Canada and start dinging these billionaires.
Well, you talk about Trump. Trump outsourced all types of labor and for his businesses, and so has Elon Musk done the same thing. Did he not? To China?
Well, I don't know. I just have a hard time trusting somebody that's not keeping his business.
So, Ira,
Canada.
you're telling me that you would trust Donald Trump more than Mark Carney? Really?
Yes, I would.
Why?
I just do. the guy speaks from the hip, and he tells us how it is.
Wow. Okay. Thanks for the call. I don't get it. How could anybody trust Donald Trump when you look at what he's doing to the country? That blows my mind. But anyway, it is what it is. Give us a call, folks. What's on your mind? 902-405-6000. Eric wants to talk a little hockey. Hello, Eric.
Hey, how you doing this morning, Todd?
I'm well, you?
Not too bad. Toronto, I'm giving Toronto a good shot because I think they owe it to the people. And if they're going to do it, this is the year because they got all the right material and they know how to beat Dobronsky. They got to shoot the puck up high because he's vulnerable to pucks that come up around his shoulders. And they got to shoot the puck in and hit Florida. They got to show Florida that they're not scared of them. And I think that's what's going to happen. As far as Winnipeg goes, I think they're on their way out. Dallas has seemed to have their number.
I agree with you there.
And as far as Washington goes, Ovechkin, he's just going through the motions. He's not even doing anything out there. So I see Carolina going on in that one. And Oilers are going to take out Vegas.
Oh, yeah, that series is done. The Oilers are going to win that one for sure. Is it Skinner's net at this point?
I remember when he used to play I think he played for Ottawa, and he didn't do all that great, but he seems to be doing great with the Oilers. So, I mean, I give them the benefit of the doubt, too. The way this hockey is going, on any given night, anybody could win, but the teams that I just said, I think they got a great shot of moving on, and we'll see what happens down the road. I wish I was Mr. Gillis going up to that game tonight because it's going to be a barn burner, and I wouldn't be a bit surprised that it goes into overtime with Toronto winning.
Okay, Eric.
And Matthews has got to show up. That's the last.
Well, Matt, look, I think Matthews. The effort is there. I mean, the effort is there. It's just, is he injured? What's going on? I don't know, but I don't think you can knock his effort.
Well, I see him, and maybe he has an injury. I don't know, but I see he's not. Maybe they're not letting him put out. I mean, Florida was blanking him like what.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he's playing. He's playing against the best players every shift, and that's when you're the top player. Everybody goes through that. Gretzky, all the greats.
Stay with Wall. I would not put Stolarz in there.
I disagree with you there. I think if Stolarz is if he's healthy, I'd play him primarily because he can handle the puck well. And Wall can't, and Florida and their forecheck that really leaves the least vulnerable, in my opinion.
We will talk to you down the road. We'll see what happens tonight.
Okay, pal. Take care.
Bye-bye.
902-405-6000. Give us a call, folks. What is on your mind today? Again, 902-405-6000. Lots of open lines for you. 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. All right, continuing with your calls, 902-405-6000. Give us a buzz again, 902-405-6000. Before I go back to the phones, I touched on this story with Dr. Gillis, and I thought I'd throw it out there to see if anybody wants to weigh in on it. A global study from UNICEF suggests many Canadian kids are unhappy with social struggles such as bullying and difficulty making friends among the sources of their anguish. UNICEF's 19th report card suggests 1 in 5 youth in Canada face frequent bullying, 1 in 5 are lonely, and 1 in 4 struggle to make friends. It blames bullying in particular for a drop in lifestyle satisfaction reported by 15-year-olds, down 3 percentage points to 76% in 2018. Despite being among the 10 wealthiest countries studied, Canada ranked 19th out of 36 countries overall, landing toward the bottom end for adolescent suicide, child mortality, and social skills. Quite a compelling story, very interesting and troubling, in my opinion. Do you agree with the study's findings? First of all, what are your thoughts on youth today and kids? Look, we often opine romantically about the past, back in the good old days, the 70s and the 80s. When I grew up, of course, things were much different. And I think that the environment for kids was much different. But was it better? Or is that just simply being nostalgic? Are things harder for kids today? I would suggest that they are. When you look at the pressures involved, and helicopter parents is a real thing. So what's your take on why kids according to the study, first of all, do you agree with the study? And second of all, what's going on? And some of you out there raising kids perhaps might want to weigh in on this. What are you witnessing this? Are you seeing this happen? Or do you think that kids generally are the same as they always were? Youth are youth, and these are the struggles of adolescence are nothing new. That, of course, or whatever else you get in your mind. The way to reach us, 902-405-6000. Let's go back to the phones, talk to Harvey. Hello, Harvey.
Todd, how are you today, my friend?
I'm well, you?
Very good. By the way, Toronto's going to win tonight. I guarantee it.
Guaranteed, eh? All right.
Yeah, no.
We'll see.
Anyway, I'm looking at the National Post on my iPad, and it's got a picture of all of the new cabinet ministers. And your first caller hit it right on the hammer, and that's what I wanted to say. The fact that he's got Christina Freeland in that picture, I mean, she's joined at the hip with Justin Trudeau. I can't look at her and not think Justin Trudeau.
Yeah.
And I think he's the godfather for one of her children.
Yeah, I've heard
I don't know what he was thinking.
I've heard that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just think he's got to get it. He's got to get the monkey on his back is Justin Trudeau. He's got to get that off his back somehow. But I have to say I was wrong. By the way, I called you a month or two ago, and I was talking about Carney being an insider, blah blah blah. But I think the way he handled Donald Trump was absolutely incredible. He basically handled him as if he was a spoiled brat, which is what Trump is. That's what Trump and Justin Trudeau had in common. They were both born with a silver spoon in their mouth. They've never had to really worry about where their next dollar was coming. So they both have that in common. And the fact that Trudeau basically kept pissing off Trump. Even after Trump won, he went on and he did a speech, and he said, he actually said this, once again, you Americans, you got it wrong. You had a chance to elect a female president, and you didn't. What do you think Trump thought about when he heard that? Like, I can't believe.
Well, I don't know why. I don't know how much energy we should exhaust talking about Justin Trudeau. He's gone. It's yesterday's
I'm
news,
trying to
right?
get him out of my mind too. He's the worst prime minister in Canada that I've experienced.
Yeah, and I think there's a good argument for that. But I think that Carney is in my opinion, and I know there's people that hate all things liberal and are going to hate on Carney no matter what he does. But I think he's a massive, massive upgrade from Justin Trudeau, to your point.
Oh, completely. Like, I've always been an independent. I've never gone with any one party to begin with. I have to say, I'm looking at Dominic LeBlanc, and I have an awful lot of respect for him. I make a prediction here, Todd.
Okay.
It would not shock me that one day he will be the next Prime Minister of Canada. I think he actually has got all of it that it takes, and it wouldn't shock me that one day he will. I think Carney's real concern right now is, as a minority government, he has to be concerned about, in a couple of years, Trump I don't think is going to be an issue, and so it's going to be the economy, and that's where Pierre Poilievre, his problem is he needs a personality transplant because he's just angry. And that's a huge factor in why he didn't win. He basically did not make friends with the Ontario Premier, who basically told all of his people, don't help him in the campaign. I mean, he keeps shooting himself in the foot. I think the Conservatives keep shooting themselves in the foot. And again, I'm not a liberal saying that. It's just my observation that they had it all going for them. And then Trump, this green orange monster, popped up. But I agree. Carney, compared to Justin Trudeau, is a complete overhaul in every way, shape, and form.
Yeah.
But anyway, Go Toronto, go Toronto. I want to see the cup come back to Canada, and I don't care who it is as long as it's a Canadian team.
Okay, Harvey, thanks for the call. Appreciate it.
Thank you much.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. Look, Mark Carney again. I know that some of you out there are not going to, don't trust him, whatever. That goes with the territory. But in my opinion, for whatever that's worth, and I'm just a person like the rest of you out there, I think he's quite an upgrade from Justin Trudeau. That's just my take. 902-405-6000. Here's a pretty succinct email from Linda, and I think it's on point. It says election over, Move on. And I think that's kind of my point here is that, look, I'm not saying blindly follow Mark Carney and the Liberals. Absolutely not. But for goodness sakes, maybe, just maybe, he might be effective and decent and good at the job and be able to manage the situation in a pretty effective way. Is that possible? I think it is. I don't think that's beyond the pale. And again, I didn't like Justin Trudeau when it wasn't cool to not like Justin Trudeau. Right out of the gate, I did not like the guy. I shouldn't say I like the guy. I didn't have any confidence in him. It wasn't personal. I just had no confidence. Didn't like his style. Thought he made poor decisions. And it turned out that I was right. There's not a lot of people out there that are going to defend Justin Trudeau at this point. I think he would have a hard time finding any cover. 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us again. 902-405-6000. And by the way, Pierre Poilievre would have marched to a huge majority, if not for the NDP. The NDP were the reason that he didn't win because the NDP upheld that government and Justin Trudeau until it was too late. Until Trudeau was no longer around. That's what really neutered the Conservatives when all is said and done, the NDP, and the fact that they didn't win any seats, 7 seats. That was the story. 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. Jason says this in an email to me. He says, can you be any more biased? Can you say Carney is an upgrade one more time? I think the 101 time you said it might convince me. Jason, why is it bias? Why am I biased? Because I think Carney's an upgrade. There, I said it 102 times. There you go. How is that bias? That's my opinion. I mean, to me, it's bias if no matter what the guy does, you're going to have disdain for him and not trust him and have no faith or confidence that he can make the right decision and believe everything Pierre Poilievre has to say. And again, bias is not the right word. Maybe you don't agree with my opinion, but that's what it is. It's an opinion. It's not based on ideology. It's not based on partisanship. It's an opinion. That's not bias. There's a difference. In my opinion. There you go. Thanks for the email. 902-405-6000. Tony, hello.
Hi, Todd. Todd, let's forget Pierre Poilievre. Let's forget the President of the United States. Now's the time. The rubber hits the road. You got a prime minister. You got a new cabinet. What are his priorities? Where's the money going to come to pay for those priorities? What is the priorities of his cabinet? I just heard Sean Fraser say that Trump is the problem. Well, Trump is not the issue. Health is the issue. Homelessness is the issue. Myriad of issues that need to be addressed that he and his now Parliament addressed prior to the election. Now is the time. Rubber hits the road, Todd. Mm-hmm. I don't care what Poilievre says. I would have supported Poilievre personally, but that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I did not support Trump. That doesn't matter. I want to see what we're going to get. We're here. We're citizens. We pay taxes. We work hard, or we've worked hard in the past. Let's see what you're going to do. You talk the trash. Now you got to walk the walk.
Absolutely. And I agree with you, Tony. And if he doesn't do a good job, you'll be the first to call, and I'll be the first to call him out on it. Right? No problem.
Absolutely. I'm going to give him a chance. I'm not a big fan of his. You know, he's got a lot of pimples, but everybody has pimples occasionally. You know, he's got a lot of bumps, but you got to see what he's going to do. And I'm willing to give him now let me rephrase that. I'm willing to give him a chance. I'm not going to give him a hell of a lot of time, and he better stay off of pumping that money up. Fraser Institute, which is a college out west, I guess, says that right at the moment, if he were to fund everything that he says he's going to do, he would double the debt and immediately and bankrupt the country. Well, here's your chance. You're a great economist. It's an interesting article. It hits every high point that he highlighted. The military, health, housing, et cetera, et cetera. And they put the numbers down that he used. And they're right. He'd blow you have to have a new a new minister of finance to lug the dollars around. But at any rate, let's give him a chance. But leave the other guys alone. Don't stay in your lane. Forget about what Poilievre is saying. Poilievre, I told you 2 weeks ago, is inconsequential at the moment. Trump is over there getting his ass kissed or he's kissing ass over in the Middle East.
Yeah, it's disgusting.
So it is absolutely disgusting.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy's unbelievable. But anyway, that's where I'm at. I'm looking at him. I want to see if he can possibly produce. That's all I got.
Okay,
to say,
pal.
Todd.
Thanks, Tony. I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. And like I said, I think you are a person who's not driven by ideology, and I believe that you will call it as you see it. And I feel the same way. Let's give him a shot.
All right.
Okay,
thanks,
Tony.
Todd.
Thanks, pal.
Day.
Okay, take care. 902-405-6000. Again, if Mark Carney does something that I don't agree with, and that'll happen, I'll be the first to say that I don't agree with it. But look, it's not a bias; it's an opinion. 902-405-6000. Greg, hello.
How you doing, Todd?
Doing well. You?
Good. Just a little thing. Me being a conservative, I have to agree that Carney is an upgrade from Mr. Trudeau, and that's pretty well, you know what I mean? That's what I look at.
Okay.
So he is a lot better than Mr. Trudeau, and so be interested to see how he's going to do things, you know?
Yeah, agreed.
So, yeah. But anyway, I want to talk about the kids and the cell phone and going on and, going through the internet and all that stuff. My question is this: where are the parents in these kids? Where are the parents controlling and watching what their kids are doing? I mean, my sister, back at the time when her 16, 17-year-old daughter, her grades were slipping, and my sister took her phone away from her. And my niece said, "That's my phone, Mom." She said, No, it's not your phone. I'm the one paying for that phone. So you'll get the phone back when your grades get back up. Well, guess what? Within 3 or 4 weeks, her grades start getting back up. She said, "Now you'll get the phone back." But if they start slipping, the same thing, and never slipped again. I'm just saying, where are the parents watching their kids? I'm pretty sure it's safe to say most of these parents are paying for their kids' phones.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And I think, and I'm just saying that, they got to. You're looking at problems, and you have the solution where parents can stand up and take their place and say, "Okay, kids, this is the way it's going to go." But they don't do that, and then you wonder why kids are low grades, they're having a hard time in school. You wonder why they're getting in bullying and all this stuff. And there's no parent control there. There's no parent supervision, and that to me is lacking. And that it might be the answer to these problems.
Okay, I think you make some great points, Greg. Thanks for the call as always.
Thank you.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. Good afternoon, Sean. How are you today?
Oh, not bad. Busy, but got through to you this time. Todd, I don't understand this, and maybe you can figure it out. But last week, the Bank of Canada issued a dire warning for this country, and there's not a peep about it on the media. You haven't spoke about it. I haven't heard it on CBC or nothing. And it's actually really bad when the Bank of Canada comes out with and releases that kind of a statement. We're in very, very deep trouble. I don't know if you've seen the announcement. Did you?
Yeah.
Or did you hear about it?
Yeah.
Like, they came out and said 60% of Canadians are facing mortgage hikes. We are going to lose massive amounts of jobs. Massive amounts of manufacturing is going to leave this country if a deal isn't done with the United States. We need to this should be the biggest focus, is not bad man Trump. We need to sit down and get a deal done, because if we don't, the longer we wait, other countries are going to get deals done, and there's going to be nothing left for Canada. There's going to be no other countries to deal with. When the United States makes all these deals, they made a deal with the UK. I thought we were going to be partners with them, right? It's our economy, Todd, is in absolute dire straits, and the media is being silent about that. And then we got Mark Carney, who borrowed over $70 million more dollars without Congress even being in, without the Parliament being in sitting. So if the Bank of Canada issues such a dire warning, and this Mark Carney used to be the head of the Bank of Canada, he should understand more than me sitting here in my truck talking to you about how bad this country is going to get.
Well, Sean, he's only been the prime minister for about 5 minutes, right? Like perhaps you give him a little time, maybe.
Well, but Todd, they're talking about making the New Deal in 2026. We do not have that much time.
Sean,
from the Bank of Canada.
Sean, we do have an agreement, a Kuzma agreement with the United States already that Donald Trump is not recognizing.
And how's that going?
Well, exactly. So you're blaming. So who are you blaming? So who are you blaming here, Sean, for this? You're blaming Canada. We have a deal which we honor. We have a leader and the president of the United States who doesn't honor it. What the hell are we supposed to do about that?
I understand. Negotiate a new one. Call him to the table like Starmer did of UK.
Yeah.
Make the deal, because if that doesn't happen, Todd, and then Canada finally decides that people are like, look at the price. I was at the grocery store. I don't usually shop for meat at the grocery store. I get it from the butcher in the country.
Yeah.
But I went to the grocery store, and a piece of steak was $18, and the piece of steak looked like something from the bottom of my shoe. And Canadians aren't going to be able to survive what is coming. And you said Mark Carney's been in here for 5 minutes. Well, yeah, and look what he's done to the past. But he borrowed $70 million.
I don't know I don't know what you're referencing, Sean. I don't know that $70 million what he borrowed. The prime minister doesn't arbitrarily borrow money. That's not how it works.
What's her name? The governor general or whatever the person is.
Treasury board
signed it. Yeah, they signed it out of Parliament, and because the $33 billion, and guess what? $80 million of that or whatever went to CBC, right? And the thing is we can't keep borrowing money.
Yeah,
and when we're in the state that we're in.
I know, Sean. I get Sean.
We're about to lose this Hyundai deal, the Honda deal, and Christie, or they think they can go in there and talk to them and fix.
Okay.
Todd, Trump banned the United States ban on EV. They lifted that. That's no longer.
Yes.
So 90% of our cars built in Canada go to the United States.
I know
we are not going to have an EV anymore.
Sean
is done.
Sean, listen.
And I refuse to say that Mark Carney did a great job when all he did was deliver a scripted punchline.
Okay. All right. I don't know what else to do with Sean. I don't know what else to tell you. There's nothing I can say or anybody's going to say that's going to alter his opinion on any of this. He has no confidence. We get it. The world's falling. The sky's falling. Mark Carney's the devil. We get it. I don't know what else to say. 902-405-6000. We'll be back. All right, taking your calls, 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. Ryan, hello.
Hey there, how are you?
Well, you?
Good. I just wanted to call in. I heard you say that you have no bias. It's just your opinion. I'm a long-time listener. I've never called in before, but your bias is evident for the Liberals. As long as I've listened to you, you've parroted every scripted line they've had.
That's bull, Brian. That is absolute bull. That is absolute bull.
Let me finish my sentence, please.
Well,
you always cut people off who have a different opinion than you.
That's not true.
You say that Trump is the biggest threat to Canada. Look at the history between Trump, the Kushners, and Mark Carney. They're in bed together financially through Brookfield. Carney does not have the best interest of Canada at heart. You say that he's been here for 5 minutes. He's been in government for decades. He's been a part of it, influencing it, and putting his 2 cents in.
For decades? For decades, Ryan? Decades?
Yeah, he hasn't been in part of the political movement here in Canada for decades.
Okay, Ryan, let me counter.
Because he lives in New York.
Let me counter something.
New Yorker.
See, this is the let me counter something you said. You said you listened to me forever, and I've parroted everything the Liberals have said.
All through COVID, man. You were like the COVID guy, the COVID king. Lock him up. Lock him up.
See you later, pal. That's ridiculous. 902-405-6000. Chris, hello.
Good afternoon, Todd. What a day you're having.
Well, it's just ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
What kind of whiskey do you like? I'll have one curried over to you.
Yeah, that's right.
Good. Look, I must say I haven't called, as you're well aware, since the election to complain that my guy lost or anything like that. I'm willing to accept the results without a problem, give the guy a chance and so on. I agree 100% with what Tony said. And I agree with you that he's an upgrade from Trudeau. But in qualifying that, from my standpoint, really, Todd, almost anybody, in my opinion, would be an upgrade.
Yeah, Trudeau. And this is like the previous caller said, that I'm a Liberal. I did nothing but rail against Justin Trudeau the entire time he was there. I can't.
Know you did.
And to say that I'm a Liberal is ridiculous.
Well, I don't think you are, because you've been pretty balanced and stuff, and you have railed against Trudeau. There's no question.
Absolutely.
But that little I love it when Sean calls. I don't often agree with everything he says, but listening to you and him go back and forth was almost like you being Superman having a debate with him being Lex Luthor. And I just hope in a couple of years we can still say that Carney was an upgrade from Trudeau, because now it's too early to tell. And a couple of years down the road, we'll see what he actually accomplishes and does, and hopefully it's good things for the country, because that's all I want.
Yeah.
And I think you've stated that as well. But it's a little too early for us to say, oh, he's doing a bad job or he's doing a good job or he's doing whatever.
Yeah.
It's too damn early to say.
Just started.
I think, though, that his meeting with Trump, and nobody can handle Trump. One of your callers earlier said Carney handled Trump really well. He didn't handle Trump. He was sitting there for over 30 minutes. He only got about 3 minutes to talk, so it was almost like he was a stick of furniture in the room as far as his interaction with Trump. You can't handle Trump. I mean, my God Almighty, it's like saying, well, I'm going to handle the hurricane. I'm going to handle the weather, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You react to Trump.
Yeah, I agree with that.
You do not handle Trump.
Yep.
And how these guys are going to react to him is what I'm going to watch for. And you won't be the first one to complain if Carney tripped. The first one, believe me.
Oh yeah, no. Look, absolutely, Chris. I'll be the first to jump right all over him. The first, and he'll do something stupid, because they always do, right? I mean, Rick Howe. I mean, God love Rick Howe. Rick had his imperfections like everybody, but Rick had the attitude that if you're in government, you're a target and you deserve to be called out on your crap. And that's the way I view it as well. I don't care what political stripe you're wearing. If you're in government, you need to do a good job, and if you don't, we'll call you out on it. Simple as that.
That you're absolutely right. It's like going to the Bedford shooting range and putting a bullseye on your back and standing out at the far end of it. People are going to take shots at you, and that's exactly what the politician does. So they better be prepared for it. You mentioned, I think, earlier in your show about that Sean Fraser, or maybe it was yesterday, you mentioned, I'm not sure, the days run together here, that Sean Fraser was a lawyer. He's now got a cabinet post that hopefully a lawyer would be qualified to do. But I wonder how good of a lawyer he is, because in my experience, most of the competent lawyers are practicing law, and the incompetent ones are either in politics or work for government.
Yeah.
So it's just, whatever. But I want to make one comment, if I could, please, Todd, on the unity thing. You mentioned about we need unity in Canada.
Sure.
Maybe I'm pessimistic or whatever, but I don't have a lot of faith in any national unity for a while, because, I mean, you've got Alberta and to a lesser degree Saskatchewan that have been screwed around by Ottawa, and they must, I can't imagine what they're feeling. Quebec, I don't think, wants unity. They want everything that unity would bring to them. As long as it benefits them, that's great. Ontario, well, for the most part, and I know a lot of people in Ontario, they think they're better than everyone else, and the world turns around them. BC is a little bit like California in their socially virtue signaling mannerisms, which I don't know how they're in it for themselves for the most part. We all are to a certain degree. Yeah. Atlantic Canada, we've always seemed to be left out of things, and we're like the poor relative that gets set at the end of the dining table and gets thrown the odd scrap once in a while. They're there once a year to make a show, and that's about it. But God, don't let them get anywhere with anything. Don't let us have anything.
Yeah, Chris, you make some great points. Look, this is You're absolutely bang on with all your points. Unity is going to be hard to get. But I suppose, like you said, we have to at some point give whoever's in charge, whoever's running the show, a shot at to prove themselves. We have to at some point succumb to that and say, okay, let's see what you got. And I think that's kind of that's where I'm at, and I think that's kind of where you're at as well, right, Chris? Okay, we lost Chris. Look, I can tell you this right now, and this is honestly, this is how I feel. If Pierre Poilievre won the election and he were the prime minister right now, I'd be saying the exact same thing. I'd be saying, let's give the guy a shot. Let's hope that he does a good job. Let's give the guy a chance. I can honestly tell you that, and you believe it or not, but that is how I feel. Jeremy, hello.
Hey, Todd, how you doing?
Well, you?
Good. Yeah, you're not a liberal. You're nonpartisan as far as I'm concerned, and I think that's clear to anybody who listens to your show for any length of time.
Thank you.
What I did want to, no worries, buddy. What I wanted to talk about was social media, unhappiness, teenagers, all that good stuff. I have a 14 and a 16-year-old. They didn't get on the internet until they were about 10 and 12. We didn't have internet before that. We lived rurally, and we had to drive up the road to log into YouTube to figure out how to do stuff on the farm or whatever. That's what we used it for. That was the tool. It was a learning tool. So that's how my kids got exposed to the internet. They're still not on social media. They don't have Facebook. They don't have Instagram. And that's by choice. They decided they didn't want to, we don't keep them off it. I mean, we do, but it's their choice. And that's made a huge difference. They're both creative thinkers. They're both problem solvers. One's got a 92 average. One's got a 97 average.
Nice.
And I think that early limitation, even though I didn't agree with my ex on a lot of stuff, that was one thing that I think really benefited both the kids. And I think that goes a long way when kids, even nowadays, who have been exposed to social media and to the internet from an early age, if you can get them to take a break, get off there, get some perspective, and look at the internet not from a place of socialization, but from a place of how can I use this as a tool to improve my skills, my life, because it's not all evil, right? We know that.
Yeah.
It can be a super useful thing.
Absolutely.
And if kids can learn that, I look to my kids as an example. If they want to learn something right away, they say, "Oh, Dad, let's go find a YouTube video."
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's not. They don't look to me to say, "Dad, how do I do this?"
Yeah.
They come to me and show me, "Hey, Dad, look what I learned how to do." Right?
Yeah.
And that I think it's going to serve them in spades throughout life, because that gives them the ability to say, "You know what? I can solve this problem.
Mm-hmm.
I have the tools to solve this problem on my own, and it's not a problem. It's not a problem. It's actually something I can figure out."
Yeah.
Right? So. Anyway,
okay, well said, Jeremy. Well said. Thank you.
Cheers,
Thanks for the call. Okay, take care. Thanks for the calls, everybody. Appreciate it very much. All right, I'd like to thank Vanessa Van Den Ness on the other side of the glass. The control board's doing a fine job as always. We're back tomorrow, 10 o'clock. See you then.